So we might rehash just a few of the stories that are doing the rounds this week. What sort of impact, Kingy, will Geoff Walsh standing down have at the Saints? They did build this strong football department around Ross, and if you'd listened to any of Ross's commentary when he was in the media, he spoke of how important it was to have those strong figures around. He'd been there for 4 months, I think it was. He spoke really strong about making the club relevant again, and all of a sudden, for reasons that are outside of his control, he has stood down. But a big or small impact, do you think, for the Saints?
Well, I think big, because I just know Geoff, and I know what he brings, and I know the professionalism that he provides, and the decision-making clarity that he has. Being in the industry for so long, in this exact role, St Kilda need a lot of correction, and obviously Ross Lyon's down there to do that. It's a big investment with Ross. But I still think there's those 3 or 4 pillars off field that are so critical to getting everything running smoothly. I understand that Dave Misson's gone in as the interim just to stem the tide, but he's a loss for me. And I just does Ross need? It's an interesting discussion. Does he need support or harnessing? Which way do you sit? And we wouldn't really know outside looking in, fresh into St Kilda, but I think over the years a strong person behind Ross has been great for Ross. So I think I agree with that, and I think if you just go back and listen to what Ross has said, I think he would agree with that as well. So I think they'd be pretty keen to get that person in place. And I mean, he jumps in. I think first day training, Max King goes down. Then James Gallagher gets let go. The list boss, Stephen Silvani, comes back in. But then Geoff Walsh leaves. So it's I don't think he would have foreseen the challenges that were facing him straight up. And Alistair Clarkson probably said the same thing. Hard to fill, isn't it, that role?
Oh, yeah, it is. You know what? I heard Craig Kelly speak with Dwayne during the week, and we'll get to Craig Kelly as CEO. He said, we have all these pathways for coaches. Basically, if you're a young 22-year-old player and you have an eye on coaching, there's pathways you can do. Coaching courses, level 4. There's the elite coaching course that you can do to prepare yourself. You can start in a development role and you can progress your way up. There's nothing for CEOs and there's nothing for footy bosses. And you try and come up with the names of who can replace him, and you really struggle.
And you find it hard not to go back to the tried and true, to the guys that have done it for 20 years. And
Jared mentioned Chris Bond. Chris Bond,
yeah.
And he's, I think he's somewhere in Tassie and sitting by a bonfire or something as well. But that's well, because we interviewed.
Is he on the run or something? Is he in hiding?
No, I think he's all
allowed
good.
To mention that he's sitting by a bonfire hiding in Tassie?
I think we can.
Okay.
Pete Ryan from The Age was on it. I think he revealed that for us last time he'd spoken to him. But yeah, if you've got a name for us that you think can do the job, 0433 98 11 16, because I'm with Craig Kelly that the pathway for CEOs and footy managers probably isn't there like it is for coaches.
If you've got a recent photo of Chris Bond in Tassie, send that through as well. But
sounds like a good line.
It is a tough role to fill, and I think if you get that role, if you get that wrong, you're in all sorts of trouble. So. No, the Saints are having to scramble and find, and it's an awkward time of year to be doing that.
Have you been out there?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, been down. Ross has taken a bit of a back seat by the look of it. From outside looking in, again, we don't only been there a couple of times, so you don't see everything, you don't learn everything. But he is really trusting guys like Corey Enright, Rob Harvey, Lenny Hayes to run the program. So they've had their challenges with injury early in this prep. I was really impressed with how young Allison was going in a couple of drills, and he's since fallen foul and gone down as well. So they're having their challenges with injuries, particularly to their tools. So it's not an easy, seamless transition back into footy for Ross Lyon at the moment.
Yeah, agree with that. 1300 736 736. Saints fans, if you want to jump on and have your say. Rinse and repeat with Jake Stringer. So yesterday it was revealed that Jake Stringer is sort of been removed from the main program due to back soreness. I'm not sure if I said this on air, but I saw him turn up on day one of pre-season, and he just didn't look fit. And I've got no, as you know, Kingy, I've got no sympathy for full-time professional athletes, even if you've been on 8 weeks holiday, to turn up not looking fit. If our social team, right, if they're listening, can they get me a split screen of the way Christian Petrarca turned up on day one of pre-season, and then put it next to the photo of Jake Stringer and the way that he turned up on pre-season training? So unsurprisingly, he ramps up his training, he looks really good, and he plays well in an inter-club that I read online, and then all of a sudden his body breaks down. I reckon this happens every single year for Jake. He's now 28 years of age. Am I too hard on that?
No, I think you've been consistent, if not anything else. What are you laughing at? No, I think that's a fair starting point. But some guys are not as easy on the eye than as others.
Fair.
That's fair. And can just look different. And I sort of think Jake's there. I think that's his physique. I was on with Dwayne last week talking about Essendon's train. He would have had 9 shots at goal in a 4x15 or 12 and a half minute practice match last week. He was awesome, playing basically full forward. He went in the centre bounce, I think, once or twice, but that wasn't his primary function. So can you get away with that? Get away with that's not the right term. Can you? Is he more suited to just being a full forward than an on-ball full forward?
Yeah. Can you manage him the way that probably Richmond, although Dustin Martin looks fit every time I see him, but they manage him because he doesn't have a big tank, so he is not required to get up the ground or enter the defensive 50, plays to his strengths. Can you do that with Stringer? But I don't think he can because he hasn't learnt the lessons of what is required to be that powerful player and to prepare yourself for that role.
Didn't he come back last year too fit and have groin soreness? Didn't he do a stack of off-season work and suffer a soft start to the year because of groin problems?
Yeah. And
so I think he's been look. I'm a sympathiser. I can understand that this is not his time. This is not his phase. For guys that can run like yourself, you love pre-season and you embarrass all those that can't run. It's particularly the repeat time trials, the 1K, the 2K, guys that can't run, they're a disaster. They rock the confidence of the whole football club.
Do you think Petrarca is a natural? I don't think he's a natural aerobic athlete. And maybe he's chiselled out of stone, so he looks different to Stringer. But Max Gawn's a good example. Like the penny drop with Max, he's smoking darts on the way to training, and then all of a sudden, 6 years later, I see him. There's not anything on him. There's nothing. Robbie Gray's a good one that I know of. Like just the way that you can actually flick the switch when you get to 23, 24, and you go, okay, now I know what's required.
Well, he hasn't played a full season of football at all. I don't think. I'm going back to 2016 to find a full season of footy. So maybe there's some truth to that. Maybe his body is not really geared for this, even though he's exceptional at it.
Who caught your eye at Collingwood, King?
Well, having a look at all the clubs, getting around, you're not looking for anything specifically, not looking for anything that's you're going to make any grand statements on, but with what the Pies have done this off-season, it'd be interesting in your thoughts. You know Billy Frampton well. I think he's got a significant role that he can play at Collingwood as that big-bodied defender that allows Darcy Moore to play higher up the field and be more of an interceptor. They've gone and got Bobby Hill, who they desperately need. I think they desperately need that harassing small forward down there. I know Ginnivan had a fantastic year hitting the scoreboard, but is he necessarily that harassment machine? I'm not convinced that he is. And Tom Mitchell, we talk a lot about Dan McStay, but Tom Mitchell will correct their clearance woes, which has been a huge concern for them. I mean, they've had to play slingshot footy for the back half of last season, which was really aggressive and really attractive. But I think all 4 of their acquisitions play round 1. And I don't know if you can say that for every team that attract talent.
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced on Frampton, just because, I mean, if you've been in the system for, I'd have to look up his numbers, but so I'm going to say 7 years at a guess, 2 clubs, and if you can't get a game at Adelaide full time, and you weren't able to get a game at Port Adelaide, why would he be any different at Collingwood would be my query. Now, I've seen him play some excellent handful of AFL games, maybe 1, 2 or 3 really good games, and then all of a sudden 3 weeks later he's out of the side. So there's something that the clubs are seeing with him that says, and perhaps that's because he hasn't found a position. He's been forward, he's been back, he's been ruck. But anyway, so I don't think he'll play a big impact. But what Mitchell does coming in means that Pendlebury goes to half back, which I kind of like. I kind of like the stableness of Pendlebury at half back. Now, he'll be challenged athletically, I think, when he plays on some of those really good high half-forward athletes, and it's tough to match that at his age. But his ball use, his leadership, his calmness across half back, we've seen it, will be good. So I just think they're so rock solid, Collingwood. So if you're looking at not just the playing group, you're looking at the off-field, the coaching, the game plan is now embedded. That will be better now. I just think the whole footy club feels really stable to me. Not dissimilar to how Geelong is stable on field, but they're also really stable off field.
I think they're in for a big year, the Pies.
Yeah,
and you talked
yeah.
about halfback. At halfback last year, they had the rising star, Nick Daicos, and he was terrific. And everyone talks about just numbers. Forget the numbers. First-year player coming in, doing what he did. There were games where he demanded a tag as a first-year halfback flank.
I called for it close checking, King. I know you love close checking. I
Love
said, when are you going to tag this bloke? You just let him run around doing what he wants.
Well, someone listened. I'm not sure which club. It might have even been Sydney.
It was the Clarksman. It was Sydney, the Clarksman, Ryan Clark.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. With great effect. So I just thought we'll go down and have a look at Collingwood train. And there's some players that train and there's some players that absolutely put it all on the line every
That is
session.
a true statement. That's one of the truest things you've said. So fill me in.
I want you to come across. I know you don't like to travel to Victoria too often. You're not
Mate, I'm there every week.
You're not that popular over here. I get it. You come over, you put a mask on and you make your way over. I want you to come over and watch this kid train. He is the absolute ultimate professional. In every drill they do, he's a standout. And I don't know if I've seen that. We talked about Sam Walsh at this stage last year, and then he got injured right on the last couple of sessions of pre-season.
Yeah.
He got injured in a tackle. This kid, I think there's more to him. And I've made some statements that if they win 15 plus games this year, Collingwood, he'll be in the votes. He's an absolute bolter for the umpires award. So can he play midfield? Can he play forward of centre? That's the next progression. And I don't think we have to have the answers on that today. And we won't know that for 6 to 8 weeks. And we don't know how Craig McRae is going to utilise this kid, because what he did last year was pretty effective.
Yeah. Well, let's get into, before we get to Annie, who's given us a call on North Melbourne, because it's been the biggest story of the week. It's probably been the biggest story of the year. I feel like I've had a lot to say about it for a couple of weeks, Kingy, but the handling of the Tarryn Thomas situation, a lot of North fans are interested in your view of it. Could they have done things differently? And is there any criticism that you can find that they didn't reveal the extent of this last year when they found out, and also not standing him down earlier on in the week and then doing so on the same day? Yeah,
I think you've got to just, before you start all this, all parties in this discussion need support. So this is not just about Tarryn, but I think you've got to be careful here that when you're talking about what North Melbourne are doing, I think they're supporting Tarryn rather than defending him. Okay, I just want to put that on the table at the start, because you're tracking back to events of last year. Those events were reported to the police and the AFL Integrity Department, and then clearly they took a course of action to try and change Tarryn's behaviour and help him through whatever you would like to call this, what this situation is. So I think you've got to be careful not to confuse that for defending or trying to sweep things under the carpet or anything like that. They certainly haven't done that. So that's probably one thing that I'd like to put on the table. I thought Sonia Hood's statement sort of laid that out pretty clearly for everyone to see, the multi-layered support program that he was part of. Obviously, things shifted when more information came to light. So I think that we find ourselves here. It's really disappointing and disturbing what we're talking about. And there is a level of awkwardness to it. But I understand that other people have got different views on how it should have been handled from minute one, and I don't necessarily disagree with some of the comments you've made. But I just think you've got to be careful. Just put a line between a difference between supporting and defending.
Was it, look, why do things like this only become public? Why does the club only react when it becomes public? Do you think they would have been better off to jump on the front foot? Because I look at it and go, well, we only hear from you because it was in the Herald Sun when you've known about it for so long. I'm with you.
They had taken action, hadn't they?
Yeah, behind closed doors.
Well, how else do you do it? I mean, you get the advice of the professionals, don't you? I mean, you seek specialists in that field. How is this handled? And clearly they've taken a management pathway to change his behaviour. So I think that there was a point of action. To say it was hidden is not quite true. It was reported to the AFL and the police and all sorts of things.
I just think when you are so strong on the standards at the footy club and others fall foul of the standards, then it's bang. All right, we're suspending this guy, or we're dropping this guy, or we're doing whatever, as footy clubs do all the time. And you get a much more serious issue that you could. It looks like they were trying to hide, and not just North Melbourne, by the way. The AFL as well. There's criticisms there with the way that they have handled it, and the point is that they were supporting him on Wednesday or whatever it was in the morning, and then one more allegation tipped it over the edge to stand him down. I was like, well, hang on, there's got all these multiple allegations from multiple people. Why was it the one extra one that forced them to take this action that they hadn't taken in the morning? But I understand we've been bogged down on this, but I did want Kingy to have his say.
I'm getting frustrated from probably the last 2 or 3 months. You're comparing everything to Jason Horne-Francis. They are totally isolated, and you have to look at each case differently. I know you're talking about the support of Tarryn versus the support of Jason. I don't think that's accurate. And I think that, I know it's flippant. You're saying that this ice bath discussion, that there are many reasons that aren't an ice bath, and you know that. And I think to compare
I read the quote out from
right.
I read the quote out from Brady Rawlings, and he said we have a lot more information than what you have, but
you don't want them to air that. You don't really want that. I mean, if you keep saying this ice bath stuff,
but is it more serious?
The answer will be these are the things. Boom, 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 boom.
And is it more serious? Well, is it more serious than what Tarryn Thomas has done?
Well, no, clearly not.
So they're standing by Tarryn Thomas, yet they're quick to exit Horne-Francis. Is the point? No, I understand. Well, he did, but he was contracted, and then Zerha goes, publicly with his grievances, doesn't say anything about Tarryn Thomas, and Brady Rawlings says that they
it's very difficult.
Trust that. There's a couple of other things that aren't in court. There's a couple of other things that Thomas has done that are on the public record that are serious, that are guilty, done, and there was nothing said about that.
Driving offences.
Yeah, you're driving without a licence. Your car's been impounded. You've been fined $900, and then you're caught driving without a licence again. No, that's enough.
I agree with you. No one's arguing that. This kid has behavioural issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is how they started addressing those things and trying to support him through that. And it gets to a stage where you can no longer support. When the extra cases are mounting up, clearly there had to be some more aggressive action, which has come to light. But I just think comparing that to Jason is wildly inaccurate, and saying it's simplifying like an ice bath, I think it couldn't be further from the truth.
But when okay. Well, we'll agree to disagree with that. When you're supporting one but not supporting the other,
Jason was supported. Jason was supported. Your actions, you either embrace a football club and the leaders and the coaches, and you listen to everything, and you adhere to structures, you adhere to basic needs.
He's a young man,
needs.
He's a very young man.
Yeah, I get all that, but they're all young men. Tarryn's 22, Jason's 19. They're all young guys. They're all making mistakes. That's okay. I got no problem arguing that. But you're saying that he's out for an ice bath. It's just getting to the point where I can see that someone say, well, here are the list of things that were going wrong.
And what I would say is they're nowhere near as serious as what Tarryn's done. So whatever list you're going to give me of Jay, that's my point.
It's not an ice bath.
But you
to say it's an ice bath.
Well, that's all I know about. So if they want to document everything that he's done, I'm happy to hear it, and then I might change my opinion.
You know about more than that. This kid was to step aside from the Tarryn discussion. I can't compare the two. They're in isolation.
But I interviewed David Noble about it. I said, what's the issue with Jason Horne-Francis? He said, look, I didn't really have much of an issue. He was frustrated, and there was nothing that Nobes had said. Now he's completely removed from this. He's the coach. There's nothing, no hanging offence of what he saw with Horne-Francis. He loved him.
They're not hanging offences.
That's all I can.
That's the point. Is they're not. They're little things that. There were times where Jason was uncoachable, whether it's from the senior coach, the line coaches, his teammates. There were times where he wouldn't adhere to structures. Some of these things are normal for young men, right? And you're trying to shape and you're trying to mould. So at some point when they won't do the little things, and in the end it realises itself as another ice bath, another commitment you won't meet, that everyone else has to meet, that you won't meet. So at some point you have to say, mate, this is going to cost you games of footy. And you try and hold that course. So I think in isolation, that's what we're talking about.
So my only response to that would be, why is Horne-Francis paying the price for that when there is much more serious things going on with another player
And that's a fair call.
that has paid no penalty? That's all I'm saying. That's hypocritical, and that was my criticism this week. 1300 736 736 to have your say on that. Right, let's move on, because you've been out and about, have been loving your training reports on Twitter and also with Dwayne's World. I've got a couple of questions just out of curiosity, because I don't live in Melbourne and don't get to see many of these teams train. Are they all doing the same stuff?
No, they're not. No, they're all trying to get to the same point at the same time, but in different ways. It depends what you want to see. If you want to see a session of just 100%, let's roll the sleeves up and go. Nothing held back, full contested work, full ball movement, the lot. Go and watch Melbourne train.
Okay.
It's just let's go. Absolute blue collar training session. Every man plays their role, if you like. And if there's a 50-50 ball to be won, they spear at that football. There's been sessions where you have to hold your breath for a Christian Petrarca to get to his feet, or for one of these younger bodies that hasn't been around as long as some of the senior core guys. They spear into a contest and you think, oh my God, is he going to be okay? And they more often than not are. But their sessions, to me, seem to be more about contest and winning your own ball. And this is just who we are. This is our identity as a football club. And if you can't be that, then you can't represent.
Do you think that was that's probably what they've done since the premiership? But that's the striking image of the Geelong premiership to me, is 50-50 ball, kamikaze. I'm winning that ball. So if that's where you want to be in September, that's what you've got to do.
Yeah,
and that's what Melbourne have always been. Recently a strong contested team, but so that would give me a massive advantage if I saw that, knowing what Geelong have done. Now it comes with some risk, doesn't it? And Ross Lyon's spoken about the risk that can happen at training. But so you're impressed with the D's?
Very impressed. And Cozzy Pickett, I know you've talked about him in terms of the contractual status, but some of the things that he does at training, it's you go, my word, the sky's the limit for this guy.
Yeah.
Where does he play? Can you afford to have him in the midfield more because he's such a creative talent forward of centre? I'm not sure, and they've probably got other players to go through the midfield as well. But I know the comparisons to Cyril Rioli were made early in this guy's career, but you just see, the more you see of him, the more you think that's where he's headed.
Don't they?
Yeah,
they stack up. It's hard to 10, 11 possession player that has such a big impact.
And they got Van Rooyen down there, which we've heard a lot about, and he was close to selection most of last year. I'm not sure how many times he was in the emergencies, but it felt like every week. He's had a fantastic. I mean, I've only seen him 2 or 3 times, but every time you see him, he stands out. He impresses. So their forward line look different.
I know Gorn's got a hammy. Did you get any insight into how they'll use both of them?
Well, not really, but I think the competition learns from itself. I would be surprised if the ruck position this year didn't, in patches or across certain clubs, when you've got the stocks or not, I'd be surprised if it didn't look a little bit like what Geelong did last year. And that's not waste a position. When the ball's in general play, not waste a position having a ruckman roaming around trying to get meaningless possessions, really. I mean, they don't very often create too much in terms of possession, the ruckman. Have your ruckman roll centre-back. I think Max Gawn will do the more centre-back work that he did probably 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And then Gawn be that roaming blitzarves type that just does the bits and pieces around the ground, can charge forward, can do the ruck forward of centre, and can still get involved with his round-the-ground touches, even though they're more they're just uncontested footy, if you like, to keep the flow of the game as a link player rather than having to go forward and catch the ball to be a goal scorer.
Do you learn anything about the professionalism of the group? Like, straight on, drill doesn't need much explaining. We're into it. There's no wasted time.
Yeah.
That you spoke about Daicos and his ability to train harder, and you can get through the sessions, but you can push yourself. Do you see that when you go and can you see the successful professional programs versus those that are younger and need work?
Yeah, you can. I mean, you can. Clubs are at different stages, aren't they? Some are having to stop and explain structures and why they're doing certain things and educate in a primary school fashion versus you go to the experienced clubs that have been the top of the tree for a little while, and it's almost like talking to uni students. They know what's expected, and they run themselves a little bit. So, now, look, I'm really impressed. If you had to rank them, you'd be really impressed with Melbourne at one. I've seen Carlton in a couple of occasions do some just terrific ball movement. Their ball movement is, I think, the focus of this pre-season. And they're not looking for a lot, Carlton. The gaps are pretty small across the comp. We talked a lot about Mitch McGovern, and it gets a lot of feedback. If he can stay fit at halfback, they're a different product, is all I'll say. They are Wiedering behind him, who's the organiser, and they allow this guy to be a bit more creative and a little freewheel a little bit. And what he does is so impactful to a game of football. Doherty going into the middle. I know we saw him probably the last 2 to 3 rounds of last year do that. Without Walsh, even with Walsh back in that team, I think Doherty's a midfielder. He's so skillful, great decision maker. And of course, you see the two tall forwards do a full pre-season together. I know they played a lot of footy together last year. They didn't do much of the pre-season together. They haven't really spent much time together as a 1-2 punch over the last few years. So that they have to be better at the end of this pre-season than what they've been. So there's really a lot to like about the way the Blues have moved the ball and the way they train.
A lot of Dogs fans out there this morning that want a bit of word on the Dogs and what they've been up to and how you've seen them.
Dogs, they're another team that just put on a show when they train. Bontempelli, as you'd expect, the full professional, has trained the house down. It'll be interesting to see how their midfield look this year, whether Bailey Smith obviously goes in and plays more prime time midfield minutes. He's missed a fair bit of pre-season. Treloar's a concern, missing pre-season. We talk a lot about their tall stocks. I think that this off-season again, Lob coming in. Lob's going to make a really big difference to Aaron Norton. Just taking that big body underneath the pack, allowing Aaron to not necessarily be that player, and being third man in, taking those contested marks. I think we'll have a huge. It's not often you see I think he's 205 or 206 centimetres. He's a monster, this guy.
Yep.
Yeah, you very rarely see an acquisition like that just come in ready to roll. We see a lot of young players come in, they develop over 4 to 5 years, but Rory will have a terrific impact on them. I think their acquisition of Oscar Baker will prove to be a good one as a delisted free agent. I think that he'll get an opportunity, whether that's as a wingman or an extra on baller at the Dogs early. But I think that the real query for all of us is how Luke Beveridge uses all these tall targets that he's got, whether they're forward or the key post defenders. He hasn't had that luxury as a coach ever.
Yep.
He's never had the luxury of changing targets forward of centre or getting players into form, just get the ball in their hands behind centre. So I think it'll be something that we'll see a little bit of something different from Luke Beveridge this year.
Could we expect a breakout? Not breakout, I don't really like that term, but Jamari Ugle-Hagan, did he look more developed? Did he look more likely to have a more consistent impact? And can you give us an insight? Because I've got a lot of time for him. I think he'll get there eventually.
Yeah,
taken some time, but there's been some signs. I think, he's improved and he's more competitive and his second efforts are better. How did he look?
It looks great. He's a beautifully skilled player. I look at him and I wonder whether he can get to the level. And Jeremy Cameron's the finished product, okay? So Jamar is nowhere near the finished product. But I wonder if that's the player that he's going to become. Up the field more, not out of a goal square, and being so creative by foot, kicking the ball inside forward 50 to the advantage of his teammates, and maybe getting a bit more ball rather than having to win everything in a contest and then chase and tackle and harass. So I think that you'll see more of that from him. Love the preseason of Cody Waitman. He looks ready to roll. It's just the Dogs they're not really seeking much, are they? The gaps between them and the absolute very best is very, very marginal.
Their list is excellent. They've got a young, exciting key position players. They've bolstered with experience. Norton could be a top 3 key position forward in the game by the end of the year. The midfield is stacked. They've got good running halfbacks, all Australians there. So I just think they're capable. They can win the premiership for me, the Bulldogs, with the list that they've got. But can they bind consistently to a game plan? Can they be harder to score against? We'll find out. And are they a happy group? I don't know. I'm yet to probably see that over the last couple of years. Had a couple of pre-season scuffles. I've seen, we saw one at Essendon. We've seen them at Adelaide in the past, and every year we have a couple. Well, James Sicily v Butler at training at Hawthorn was revealed by Channel 7 last night. CJ had his say on the little beef.
I mean, it's just a competitive nature here at the Hawks. I reckon it's something that we're really trying to develop and just playing really hard, attacking footy. It's good to have a little punch on now and then.
I don't mind it either. It shows. I reckon it shows you care. There's competitive tensions. It's been a long pre-season. You feel like you're ready to go. So I've got no issue with it. But you're out to Hawthorn, Kingy, and I did see one of your tweets. It did strike you. Just the first thing was how young they are.
They're very young. Yeah, very young. Can you be captain if you get beat up at training? You have to win. If you're going to get involved in those scuffles, you got to win them. Sicily has to win them.
Good point.
No, I reckon it's great to see a bit of an edge. Look, they're a young group. There's no doubt about that. I think the importance of the seasons of Wingard and Bruce, Sicily, Impey to just lead the way. I think that'll be how their year tracks for me. The 4 or 5 core senior players need to have 8 out of 10 seasons for them to be an 8+ win team for me. But it's not necessarily about winning games of footy. You see John Newcombe, and the more you see him, the more you are impressed with what he's becoming and the impact that he has on this group. I do think that Warple is going to become or regather that form of 3 to 4 years ago, where he was a best and fairest winner. He looks like his clearance work at training, it looked like the investment in him. So, hey, listen, we've moved those other guys out and out of the football club to get you back firing. I think will pay dividends. And this got a whole host of youngsters that really impress you at times, and at other times you sort of need to look away. But it's going to be a real challenge for the coach to keep this group that will be inconsistent invested in the season, particularly the second half.
Where are you on the topic that you've driven more so than anyone, and that is that rebuilding coaches don't survive, and they have rebuilt more savagely than perhaps any team since maybe North Melbourne, 3 or 4 years ago when they cut 11, or it might have been more than that. Do you think I interviewed Andy Gower as the new president, and I asked him that question. I said, "You're going to support him? Or it's going to take time. He's going to take 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 years for Sam Mitchell." Where are you at with that now, for him in particular?
Yeah,
and what it means.
I worry for him because I do genuinely believe the rebuild coach, he puts in three drafts for the betterment of the football club, and whatever they get on field, they get. Very rarely do they come out the other side. It takes a really strong club, and even in saying there was clubs like the Richmond Football Club supporting Damien Hardwick, to just get over that hump, and then you see the benefits. To Hawthorn have that resilience at board level, given that it's a new board. I think it's different when the board's been there for a period of time. There's stability, and you can take some blows. I'll be listening for the first bit of wavering from any board member about the direction that they've taken, if there's any steps back, if there's any readdressing of timelines, those sorts of things. That's when I'd get concerned for Sam. But he's absolute in his conviction that this group is the group. He's got the premiership players on this list already, and it's just a matter of moulding and shaping their development. So I admire his belief and I admire his courage. But the reality is that most of these guys in this phase of a rebuild don't survive.
It's going to be it will be a fascinating watch. He joined us every fortnight last year. We'll see if we can get him back, whether he's prepared to come on Fireball Friday. Would love to have you, Sam, if you're listening. Good morning to you. But Hawthorn are a watch. Last year, at about this time, we did our pass marks for each team. Oh, yeah. I want to do that. I want to do that again.
Next week?
So we'll do that next week. It took us... We were going to get through all 18 in one show. That didn't happen. I think we got through about 4. And then I'm not sure we even got to all the teams.
Next week.
We'll do it next week. But can I have a preview of Hawthorn? A pass mark win-loss for Hawthorn.
Well, this is the awkward...
I've got it at 4.
4?
4 wins.
Gee, that's a low bar.
Yeah, well, have you seen what they've done? I mean, North Melbourne and West Coast won 2 last year. So I think 4, double that. They won 8 last year, the Hawks, but I can't see them getting to that. So 4 or 5 would be about where I see them.
I think they'd be devastated with 4.
Do you think they would be?
Yeah. 8 wins last year. They're super competitive in the back half of the year. Probably had opportunities to win some of those games and didn't
Mitch
get over
Lewis,
the line.
Nervous about him.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I don't necessarily. I think they'd be minimum 6.
Okay.
They'd be disappointed with anything less than 6.
Maybe I've been a bit soft there. Maybe I'm a bit rusty, but our pass marks will be back.
I think this is why we did 4 teams last
next
year.
week, and I'll have a bit more. I'll have a bit more time to think about it. But I don't see them winning more than 4 or 5. Hawthorn. But anyway, I might be wrong, as I often have been.
Question: have we seen the biggest back office error for some time that could drastically affect the premiership chances for the Brisbane Lions in 2023?
Biggest, fill me in.
August 7 last year versus Carlton, Marcus Adams went down with concussion. From that moment, he never played another game or another minute of AFL football, and they had to operate without him. So they've seen their line-up without him, and Jack Payne goes down back, and they tried to sort of hold ground, and ultimately they ran a little bit short and lost in a prelim final to the Cats. 8 weeks later, the Western Bulldogs signed Liam Jones, who was underneath the eyeballs of all in Brisbane. They would have met with him. They would have analysed whether they need to address their issue at fullback, given the fact that there's a full likelihood, and the medicos will be all over this. They know the percentages of what we may see him back for the start of the season. There's a 60% chance.
I don't think anyone knows.
There might be a 20% chance we don't see him for the first 6 weeks. There might be a 20% chance he never plays again. There would have been numbers run across that. At that point, they needed to make a decision to cover fullback. Now, Dara Joyce has been put onto the list, and I'm not necessarily saying these guys are not going to be any good. Jack Payne's played 30-odd games of footy. I'm not sure whether he's in and ready to go, and a high-quality fullback that can lock down guys like Tom Hawkins and Aaron Norton and these guys that are going to come up in a final series.
Kerno Mackay.
Dara Joyce, he's played 2, 3, 5 and 3 games the last 4 years. So, I'm just concerned that a decision made in the cool, clear light of day, and we won't have the answer on this till September, and that's assuming that Harris Andrews plays a full year. What if he misses a block of 6 weeks? Where to then?
But who is the team most likely to be the Collingwood of 2022 this year?
See, that's
and I'm struggling to find it, because I mean, who's in the running really? Hawthorn? No. North Melbourne? Probably not. Adelaide? I don't think it'll be Adelaide. I don't think Adelaide are capable of playing in a prelim final this year like Collingwood were. And then you go to, could it be St Kilda, Essendon? But I don't know if there's going to be one. I mean, we all speak
Giants,
about Collingwood and what they did.
Some unknowns.
Yeah, still got probably the most likely, because they've still got a core group of very good players with a lot of youngsters around them.
So Port Adelaide won 10 games. Where does that sit in your criteria?
Yeah, well, it's probably not going from bottom 4 to a prelim. So it's difficult to do.
Okay. So you're basically saying the season will be run by 12 teams?
Yep, I am.
That's a doom and gloom. It's day one.
No, I can write off a number of teams. I can. Luke Hodge was on the show the other day. I said, Hodgie, who can't make the final? He said, I don't know if there's anyone. He goes, and then he said, maybe Hawthorn. I reckon there's 7 that can't already.
Really?
Yeah, I do. Well, let's do it. So West Coast, no.
Why no? This is one that I think it could bring some feedback at the end of the year, because they were seriously unhealthy for the last 18 months.
Well, I think that the health of the group is going to be an issue again. I mean, Luke Shuey doesn't get through full seasons of football. Elliot Yeo doesn't get through full seasons of football. Nick Naitanui, it's going to be tough for him to get through full seasons of football. Oscar Allen, there's a lot of question marks over his body. Shannon Hearns, he's old now, and what can you expect from him? Who's going to kick the goals? Josh Kennedy's not there. He's been a 50-goal forward for them for a long period of time. So I just have too many questions over the Eagles.
So many Eagles we haven't seen yet, though, mate.
But not elite top-end talent draft picks that have been on the list for 4 or 5 years that are ready to go.
Campbell Chesser we haven't seen. He was pick 14 last season.
Yeah, second year, it's going to be tough for him.
Yeah, no,
to make a big
there's so
impact.
many we haven't seen. That's my only reservation. I think they can. I think they could surprise a few. They're not a 2-win team like they were last year.
They
They're
can't.
not.
There'll be carnage if they're a 2-win team. There'll be absolutely carnage out there. Hawthorn, no for me. The Giants, no. Gold Coast, no. Essendon.
Why no the Gold Coast?
No, I think there's too many question marks over them as well. I don't think they improved in the off-season, where a number of teams did. Essendon, you listen to Brad Scott's language, he's preaching patience. So for that, to me, it says a bit of time for the Bombers, and they're quite young. So yeah, anyway, I've put it out there. I could be proven wrong, and someone will clip this up at the end of the season and replay it, but that's fine.
Under promise and over deliver, I think, at the Bombers.
With Brad, yeah,
Talk
smart.
them down. Don't create any headlines and try and sneak up on a few. They do lack for a little bit in terms of their targets forward of centre, and they still miss that one big-bodied defender.
The other one I wanted to flag with you, unless you've got something else, is I did see that Cam Rayner might be having a positional change to half-back, Kingy.
Do you think that's long-term?
Would be an error for me. Would be an error. Everyone's looking for it, and you've spoken about it as much as anyone. Everyone's looking for that centre bounce player that goes forward and does damage. Tom Papley, you were big on last year.
Yeah.
So if you've got that, and Cam Rayner, I thought he took massive strides last year into being what everyone wants from Dustin Martin, what the Dogs try to do with Bontempelli, Isaac Heaney. I mean, Jake Stringer when he's up and going, Jordan De Goey. Everyone wants one. The Lions have got one, and the thought is to push him to half back. Now, that might have just been a trial that they had a look in a press. So I don't know. I might be barking up the wrong tree. I haven't seen them train. But if that was the case, that would be an error.
So this feeds into my discussion, right? At what stage do you know what you've got? At what stage do you know, yep, this is the player that we've recruited? He's now 23. Mm-hmm. He's played 87 games, Cam Rayner. This is what he is. He's a forward pocket type that can outmark his like-sized opponent in a contested marking sense on occasion. He's a very good crummer, but he's not a midfielder, and he's probably not a centre bounce player. Mm. At what stage do you say, you know what, let's give up on that and let's just put him back to where he's strong and where he can actually win a game for us?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the exact answer to
5 years? 4 years?
Yeah, and he had the knee, so I mean, you've got to give him some time.
Even not just him specifically. Like, at what stage do you say this is the commodity?
4 years, 50 games. 40, between 40 and 70 games.
I think they've tried this with Rayner. They've tried it with Bailey. Aren't they just half-forward flankers?
I think Rayner can be a bit more than that. I think he can be a centre bounce impact type.
Yeah. Yeah, the jury's out for me. I think that they've lacked that extra midfielder, and they've tried to create one from half forward, and then they've thought, I think in this offseason, let's just go and get a Dunkley and just get the midfielder that can go both ways and play the way we need to play in there.
All right. And the other one that I had Harris Andrews on the show last night, and you're always a bit nervous when you have a player on that you've been quite strong on a couple of occasions. Last year.
It's a regular occurrence for you.
Last year I said...
You wouldn't interview anyone.
Harris Andrews is 25. He looks 65. It was a bit of a throwaway line. But you know what I mean when I say that, because at times he does look like he struggles to bend over and pick up the ball. So I put that to him. He hadn't heard the criticism, which was a relief. But Jared said to me, well, what if he was injured? And I said, well, how would I know if he was injured, Jared? He said, well, but he might have been. I said, but if a player is out there, I can't change the opinion that I have because he might be carrying an injury that I've got no idea about. When you are commentating on a game, do you factor the likelihood that the player could be carrying an injury before you critique their performance?
Oh, wow. Only coming back from injury, I think you have to factor in, but not. No. Once they've declared themselves right to go. And I found myself in a little bit of trouble with Tarryn Thomas last year. I criticised his body language in a game in Tasmania. I think it might have even been against the Crows. And they just... I was unaware that his grandmother had passed away that week. So those sorts of things, unless you're advised of those, if clubs want to put out reports saying these players are carrying injuries, we will then address that accordingly. But that's not going to happen, the injury status of a player.
And it should, because other bigger sports than AFL do it, instant injury reports as it happens. You look at the NBA, you look at the NFL.
Yeah.
Star quarterback goes off. Within 5 minutes, you've got to report whether he's likely to come back on, what the initial diagnosis of the injury is. So you're right. Unless the clubs are going to do that, then we just call it as I see it. Now, there's examples where a player might get a massive corky in the first quarter. He goes off, he gets strapped up, he comes back on, he's inhibited. Of course, you factor that in. But if Patrick Cripps is carrying a back injury and he's playing every game for the year and he's putting himself out there, you can't change your opinion. I don't think.